Hey guys, Big Dave coming at you from Morro Bay. It's time for the review for exam one. It's really nice out here right now, about 70 degrees with the light breeze, the ocean in the background. I think I need a Mai Tai or something. It's so nice out here.
No Mai Tais till after the review, Dad.
See how my kids are to me? They don't treat me good. I was trying to figure out a reason why I would want to have kids, and I still can't figure one out. But anyways, here we go. All right, so on this study guide right here, part that says to study the following maps, you don't have to do it. But the questions from the book, I'd like you to do those. All right, so find a book, I hope, and answer these questions. You're kind of on your own with those. So where it says additional hints, I'll go through those with you. When you do the study guide, please type out the questions and type out the answers for me, okay? So where is the U.S. Rust Belt located? That's the old Northeast. Part of the United States where heavy industry was located throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Beginning in the 70s and the 80s, some of those industries became, I guess, a little bit obsolete. We moved more into technology and other sectors of the economy became more important. Where are first world countries or regions located? The United States and Canada would be first world. I don't think any others in the New World or Latin America would qualify. Most of Western Europe would be considered first world or developed. Let's see, in Asia, we would go probably with Israel, would be considered developed. Japan, South Korea, Singapore would probably make the grade. Probably you wouldn't find any in Africa, any countries that would be considered to be developed or first world. You'd have to throw in, let's see, Australia and New Zealand for sure. So I think I covered most of them. So the first world are the developed countries of the world. Who are the Cajuns? So Cajuns were people who originated in the eastern part of Canada, like Nova Scotia. And they felt like they were being persecuted or discriminated against by the British, and they made their way down to Louisiana, to the mouth of the Mississippi River. So those are the Cajun people that live down there. A lot of Creole culture down in Louisiana, on the delta down there, the Mississippi River. Name the tectonic and gradational processes. Tectonic processes are those that want to build up the Earth's crust. So build mountain building forces. So that would be like folding, which is wrinkling of the Earth's crust. You have some mountain ranges in the world that are composed of folds, like the Appalachians. The Rockies have a lot of folds in them. The Ural Mountains in Russia. So folding, faulting, that's number 2 on your list. That's when you have earthquakes, like the east side of the Sierra Nevada mountains has been uplifted by earthquakes over the last 15, 20 million years. The east side of the Grand Tetons in Wyoming have been uplifted by faulting also. So folding, faulting, and number 3 will be volcanism. So some mountain ranges have volcanic cores to them. Mountain ranges that are being formed today as a result of volcanic activity would include the Andes or the Cascades of the Pacific Northwest of the United States. So tectonic processes, folding, faulting, volcanism. Gradational processes want to wear down the high places, fill in the low places, make everything flat like Nebraska. So that would be like running water, rivers. Running water, wind would be important, particularly in the desert. Moving ice, glaciers, like went through Yosemite Valley 3 or 4 times in the last million years. And waves and currents over here at the coast, right? At the beach. So it's the interaction between tectonics and gradation that gives character to mountain ranges like the Sierra Nevada and the Cascades and so forth. So gradational processes, running water, wind, moving ice, waves, and currents. What are the populations and the population growth rates for the world and the U.S.? Well, why don't we go with, for the world, about 7.4 billion, growing at a rate of about 1.1% per year. United States, why don't we go at about 325 million or so, growing at a rate, if you include immigration figures, at about 1%. Okay, let's use those numbers this semester. Understand the law of 70. This is a trick you can use with your money, or we use this in population growth. So So the law of 70, what you do is you take the growth rate and divide it into 70 and gives you rough doubling times. So for example, if a country like the United States continues to grow at 1% per year, the population would double in probably about 70 years. A country like Mexico is growing at more like 2% per year. If it continues to grow at that rate, it could double in possibly 35 years. A country like Kenya in Africa might be growing closer to 3% per year. So its population could actually double in 23, 24 years if that growth rate continues. So the law of 70, you take the population growth rate for a region and you divide it into 70 and gives you doubling times. Latitude and longitude, it's the Earth's grid. So they're both measures of distance. So latitude lines are called parallels. They run across the map. They run east-west to tell you how far north or south you are of the equator, which is 0, to a maximum of 90 degrees. The North Pole is 90 degrees north. The South Pole is 90 degrees to the south. Longitude lines run up and down, or north-south, and the lines are properly called meridians. So meridians will tell you how far east or west you are of the prime meridian, which runs through Greenwich, England, near London. So the prime meridian is 0 degrees longitude, and you can go to a maximum of 180 degrees to the east or 180 degrees to the west. So latitude, those lines are called parallels. They run east-west. They measure how far north or south you are of the equator to a maximum of 90 degrees. Longitude lines, they run north-south, but they measure how far east or west you are of the prime meridian to a maximum of 180 degrees. Okay, page 2 for you. I'm turning mine over here. A post-industrial transformation. That's when you have a decline in the percentage of jobs in the primary and the secondary sectors of the economy, and an increase in the percentage of jobs in the tertiary and quaternary sectors. Now that's a lot. It's a mouthful right there. So the primary sector of the economy is extractive. That's like mining and fishing and agriculture. You're extracting things from the earth. The secondary sector is manufacturing. You turn raw materials into finished products. Tertiary sector is the service sector of the economy. Okay, it'd be things like retail. It would be the burger flipper at Burger King, the barista at Starbucks, the flight attendants on the airlines. It could be the State Farm agent. So anything that's providing service for the people that manufacture or extract from the earth. Quaternary sector is the information sector. So we've been in a post-industrial transformation for the past probably, I'd say since the 1970s and 80s, where there's been a decline in the percentage of jobs in the primary and the secondary sectors, increase the percentage of jobs, tertiary and quaternary sectors. Okay, where are the large conurbations located in the United States and Canada? Conurbations are like urban agglomerations where 2 or more cities merge together. Like think of the Phoenix area or the LA Basin or the San Francisco, the Bay Area, where cities just kind of are all merged together. So the big ones I'd like you to know about, the biggest one in the United States is called BOWASH. It's an area that stretches from Boston to Washington, D.C. It's a 500-mile stretch where it's extremely built up along the I-95 corridor. Might be 50 million people in that area right there. The lower Great Lakes, like through the Midwest, there's probably 15, 20 million people right in that area right there. In Pittsburgh and in Cleveland and Detroit, those cities right through there. The coast of Florida, both the Gulf side and the Atlantic side, you might have 18 million people in that area, lots of retirees. Why don't we talk about San Sam? We're going to go San Francisco to San Diego. If you take that area, I know there's open space along the Central Coast, but generally, if you take that area from the Bay Area to San Diego, you're talking 32 million people, okay? Just an incredible amount of people. The biggest one in Canada is in the southeast. It is called Main Street, and it stretches from Windsor, which is across the border from Detroit, and it stretches all the way to Quebec City at the mouth of the St. Lawrence River. Okay, so let's see. Let me review. There's BOWASH, there's the lower Great Lakes, coastal Florida, San Sam, and Main Street, which is in Canada, southeast Canada. Some important measures of development to determine whether a country is developed or not. Well, you could look at a country's population growth rate. Generally, the countries that are developed have a lower population growth rate. You might look at productivity per worker. How many whatevers does your workforce make for whatever unit of time? How productive is your workforce? Like Japan, United States, extremely productive. You could look at the percentage of the labor force involved in agriculture. That tends to be really low in developed countries like the United States, Canada, Japan, Israel, right? Western Europe. It tends to be higher in places like India or China or Mexico in underdeveloped countries. Some other measures of development. Let's see. So, per capita energy consumption, like the United States, use a lot of energy per person. So those are just some of many measures that could be used to determine whether a country is developed or underdeveloped. Okay, the demographic transition comes in three flavors, 3 stages. So this was based on what England went through, what the United States has gone through, Japan, as well as Israel, the developed world. In the first stage is called the pre-industrial stage. Birth rates and death rates are high, so the population doesn't grow very quickly. No countries are left in this. Second stage is called the transition stage. In the transition stage, the birth rates remain high, but the death rates drop due to the diffusion, which means the spreading of medical technology. The Red Cross, the UN goes out and inoculates people in third world countries, and people start to live longer. So if you still have a high birth rate and a lower death rate, the country's population grows pretty rapidly. The third stage is the advanced industrial stage, and that's where the developed world is, the first world, United States and Japan and Canada and Australia and New Zealand. In this stage, the birth rates also drop due to urbanization. Okay? That means people moving into the cities, where women start getting careers, correct? There's more availability for birth control if women choose to use that. And all of those things tend to delay the childbearing years. In rural societies, children might be little economic assets. They can work in the fields. In cities, kids are very expensive. They're little economic liabilities. So as a result of urbanization, you're not having as many kids. So in the advanced industrial stage, the birth rate drops, the death rate's already low, so the population grows relatively slowly. So 3 stages, demographic transition. 3 parts of the Great Central Valley. In the north is the Sacramento Valley. In the south is the San Joaquin Valley. In between is called the Delta, east of the Bay. Sacramento Valley, San Joaquin, and the Delta of the Sacramento and the San Joaquin rivers. Nowhere precipitation is high and low in the United States. Well, basically along the west coast of the U.S., precipitation increases the further north you go. You're getting closer to the source of the storms, which is the Gulf of Alaska. It's very dry in the intermontane area, which is in between the Sierra Nevada and the Rockies, because it's in the rain shadow of the Cascades and the Sierra Nevada. So very dry in the western part of the United States when you get west of the Rocky Mountains. It's in the rain shadow again of the Sierra Nevada and the Cascades. As you move east, precipitation gradually increases. You get more moisture off the Gulf of Mexico and off the Atlantic. So in the Great Plains, we're just to the east of the Rockies, precipitation gradually starts to increase. As you move on the interior plains, the Mississippi Valley, precipitation increases even more. And then in Appalachia, it increases even more. Okay, that would probably be good for that question. The fall line is the physical boundary between what's called the Piedmont and the eastern coastal plain. So as you head east, you have the Appalachians, where you all know where that is. Next comes the Piedmont, which is lower than the Appalachians, right? But then even lower elevation is the Atlantic coastal plain, the eastern coastal plain. So that boundary between the Piedmont and the eastern coastal plain, there's a change of elevation. We have little waterfalls. And it's called the fall line. You have a lot of cities along the fall line. That's the I-95 corridor, Interstate 95 also. Where is the rain shadow? In the Sierra Nevada and the Cascades. So it's on the east side. It rains more on the west side of the Cascades and the Sierra Nevada than it does on the east side. Where are the most French-speaking Canadians located? That would be in Quebec, province of Quebec. So forget the two matching sections. You're going to write a couple essays for me. Where it says list 8 possible reasons, you're going to write an essay there instead. So let me tell you what you're going to write about. You're going to give me maybe a page on this, type double space. I don't think I need any more than that for each one. So maybe 200 words, somewhere in that ballpark, 250 max, something like that. So 8 possible reasons why the gap in living standards between rich and poor nations might have been increasing in recent years. Okay, one could be climate. It sure helps if you have a great climate. The United States has been blessed with a wonderful climate, right, which has helped us. But then again, Argentina has a great climate, and it's considered to be an underdeveloped country. So climate helps. Do you have to have it? No. A place like Israel has overcome that with really a lot of brain power. They pioneered drip irrigation systems, right, and things like this. So it helps to have a good climate. Do you have to have it? Not necessarily. It can be overcome, but it sure helps. Another one you could write down is natural resources. It sure helps to have them. United States, again, blessed with lots of natural resources. A country like Russia, though, is blessed with natural resources, yet it remains underdeveloped. Political and economic problems over the years. Countries that have overcome a lack of natural resources would include Japan and Israel. They import almost all of their raw materials, but they have a highly educated workforce. Education levels you can write down for sure. It helps to have an educated workforce for sure. So that would be number 3 on the list. Number 4, population growth rates. It's tough when your population is growing extremely rapidly to be developed, right? It's just very tough to provide enough jobs for all the young people coming into the workforce. It's hard to provide enough schools and hospitals for everybody, sewer lines, electrical lines, highways, all that stuff's tough when your population is growing too quickly. So that would be 4, population growth rate. 5, you could write down political economic problems. We mentioned Russia already. Argentina has had a lot of political economic problems also. Lebanon has had a hard time over the years. So political economic problems can definitely hamper development. Technology. Wow. How can poor countries like in Africa ever expect to keep up with our level of technology in the West, like in the United States and in Western Europe, in Japan, in Israel? I don't know how it's possible. You may think I'm kidding, but in some African countries, math is still taught with bark and sticks. Or I'm sure in every one of your houses, you guys have a cell phone, and you probably have either a laptop or a desktop or have access to that. So levels of technology. And in terms of industry too, the technology involved in producing products these days. The debt issue. Poor countries in the world, the third world, fourth world is the poorest of the very poor, owe the rich nations, us, Western Europe, Japan, and so forth, over $4 trillion. It results in a net transfer of wealth from them to us of several billion dollars a year, which is incredible. We're real rich, they're real poor, yet they end up giving us money every year for interest on this debt that has been run up over the years. So poor countries over the years have tried to borrow money so they could build roads, so they could build industry, they could build bridges, in some cases even a nuclear power plant, right? And now they're having a hard time paying back some of this debt over the years. War hampers development. There's no doubt about that. Imagine trying to develop your country in Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, or in the 80s and the 90s in Nicaragua, El Salvador, or Angola in Africa. So war can definitely hamper development. So I hope that helped you guys out. So again, the second part of your essay, or essay question number 2, it says in essay form, discuss what measures could be taken to help poor nations develop and possibly narrow the gap. I'd like you to talk about 4 things, and if you have other ideas, please throw them in there also. Number 1 you could talk about is debt relief. Third world countries are burdened by high debts. I think I talked about that a little bit earlier. Also, so you could talk about potential debt relief for third world countries. Population control. We talked about that a little bit just a second ago also. It makes it difficult to develop when you have a super high population growth rate. Too many young people coming into the workplace every year. to provide jobs, and then to provide services for your country, infrastructure improvements, schools, hospitals, and so on. You can disagree with this idea of population control also. I know that's a little bit controversial, but at least mention it. Tell me if you think it's a good idea in the third world or not such a good idea. Village banks or micro banks you could possibly talk about. This is where you have loans going out to people like in small villages or in towns, maybe like $1,000 a piece to everybody. And say we give it to 20 people. If one person decides not to pay back their loan, the rest of the people are responsible for it, and that puts pressure on the person that's not paying to repay their loan. But by giving money to at the bottom rather than to corrupt government officials or maybe corrupt dictators and things like this, the money starts at the bottom, and people can start small businesses and work their way up. So you can read about these. I think they have one I read about in Peru. They have this program, as well as Bangladesh. I think it was called the Grameen Bank in Bangladesh, Bank of Seoul in, it was either Peru or Bolivia, but you can read about this idea also. And maybe an expansion of groups like the Peace Corps, where young people, or maybe not even so young people, can go into third world countries to help them start programs. So I hope that helps you with essay question number 2 also. You're going to write your vocabulary out, the word, and then type out the definitions. The study guide, I want you to type the questions and the answers. Remember, you don't have to do the part that says study the following mass, but I do want you to do those first 7 questions out of your textbook, and then do all those ones that I just gave you, and then type up your essay, no more than a page each on each one of those 2, but answer both parts of it, okay? And if you can, give me a couple citations each, right? If you use work, give credit where it's due, okay? Try to do your own work too, I'd really appreciate it. Okay guys, get after it. See you soon.